fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests. Stephen Novella once told us that there is nothing scary about science. Nothing magical. It's simply a way to systematically, carefully, and thoroughly examine nature and to use consistent logic to evaluate the results. Which makes it even more puzzling that evolution gets treated with such suspicion. Thrown off by the incomplete and sometimes hard to understand fossil evidence for evolution, many instead takes refuge in denying it. And I ask myself, don't they know the truth is out there? That's a trilobite. I want to tell you the untold story, the story about natural selection as a means for slow and gradual change. It is an early summer morning. The sun is just breaking through. Imagine a moth flying on silent wings. Silent but tired wings. As the early morning sunrise reaches the trees, the large insect lands. It lands softly on the trunk of a tree to rest through the light hours of the day. The colors of its wings match perfectly the bark. And as it melts into its surroundings, none but the most agile of observers will realize it's there, which means it's safe from predation. It's supposed to be something there. What is there? It's almost hidden, isn't it?
Going through adaptation.
Wrong report. Ah, come on. I love it. Okay.
That's very nice.
It is a blank.
Okay, we do it without. It's too bad though. Sorry about this. More than one way to skin a cat, I think. Ah, darn it. Okay. That's a close set. Well, sorry about that. The colors of its wings perfectly matching the bark, and as it melts into our surroundings, it's almost invisible, protected from predation. But the peppered moth comes in two different color variations. A small part of the moths born are black, not peppered. For hundreds, or more likely thousands of years, the smaller black population has been dwindling. But then something happened. Around 1800, together with the Industrial Revolution, constant smoke and chimneys filled the air with coal dust that settled on almost anything. And one thing it settled on more than anything was the bark of the trees and the walls. All of a sudden, the protected environment that the moths had disappeared. The peppered moth stood out against the black bark of the trees. However, the black population of the same moth all of a sudden was hidden. So gradually, a change began. And the change began towards the darker moths. There's a small genetic difference in between the two moths. And that difference got expressed. We call it genetic expression. That difference got expressed because of the environment. So because of the environment, the dark moths became more and more prevalent. In the beginning of the 1900s, only about 6% of the moths were the peppered moths. Only about 6%. was a lighter color. Right now we have a lot of clean air pressures from environmental groups. And the tree bark is once again the lighter color. And as of today, over 90% of the population is a lighter colored moth. That is evolutionary pressure. We had an evolutionary pressure that drove the moths toward the darker expression. And right now, the evolutionary pressure drives it towards the lighter expression. There are other examples. 1975, scientists from the United States started an experiment in Trinidad, in a stream. And the experiment was to study guppy. And guppy is a fish, a tropical fish, that is very prevalent in the Amazonas and in some islands in the Caribbean. Trinidad, one of those. He started to study this fish in this one stream. And he divided the streams into different areas. And then he artificially made sure there were different evolutionary pressures in each one of these areas. For one thing, he removed predation. So he removed the fish that eats the guppy. When he removed the predation, all of a sudden the coloration of the males became much brighter. It seemed like the females of the species preferred the colorful males. Sadly, in the natural environment, so did the predators. So it was a balancing between the brightly colored males and where they could hide. This experiment is still going on today. 45 years later, they still collect data. But predation had more than one consequence. It also had the consequence that the size of the guppy became larger when there was no predation. All of a sudden, it didn't need to hide in those small crevices. All of a sudden, it didn't need to hide in the flowers and in the plants underwater. One more thing that happened was that in the wild, when they had a lot of predators, we needed a lot of fry, fish kids. And because of that, they had a lot of fish babies. And they needed that. They needed to have that extra dump of kids because so many of them were going to be eaten. So when we removed the predation, all of a sudden the females didn't become fertile as often. And the batch of fry that was born was smaller. These are evolutionary pressures. And it's easy to see with all the data that some of it is driven by what the female wanted the male to look at, or what the male could stand as far as size, or by the other factors. My point is, there's nothing scary about science, nothing magical. It simply provides a way to carefully and thoroughly observe nature and to use consistent logic to evaluate the result. And when we evaluate the result from our studies, of these two studies and many, many more, time after time, Darwin's theories from 150 years ago that he wrote about in The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection are still proven in principle. The case for slow gradual change through evolution, through natural selection, has never been stronger, and it grows stronger day by day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. If we could take a moment, please, to provide Michael with speech feedback. It is now time for our parliamentarian report. Please help me welcome Ernest Moses.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most welcome guests. So, I'll be doing the role of parliamentarian